Captain Cole Payne had survived 15 years of interstellar warfare by following 3 simple rules: stay alert, trust no one completely, and never get emotionally attached to anything you might have to walk away from. Standing in the bustling spaceport of Nixera Prime, watching purple-skinned Vidian civilians give him suspicious glances while trying to pretend they weren't, Cole was beginning to suspect that his current assignment was about to test all 3 of those rules. "Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez crackled through his comm implant, "we've got a situation developing in the industrial district. 3 Vidian children reported missing, ages 4 to 8. Local security is requesting Terran assistance." Cole felt his stomach drop. Missing children during a fragile ceasefire was exactly the kind of incident that could spiral into diplomatic catastrophe. "Any idea who the kids belong to?" Cole asked, already moving toward the industrial sector while keeping his expression carefully neutral. "That's the problem, sir. They're not just any kids. They're the Empress's daughters." Cole stopped walking so abruptly that a Vidian merchant carrying crystalline cargo nearly collided with him. "Rodriguez, please tell me you're joking." "Wish I was, sir. Princess Lyra, Princess Nyx, and Princess Zara. 8, 6, and 4 years old respectively. They were on some kind of cultural tour of the spaceport with their tutor when they apparently decided to go exploring on their own." "Outstanding," Cole muttered, resuming his path through the crowded port. "So we're looking for 3 royal children in an industrial maze that hasn't been designed with child safety in mind." "Pretty much, sir." "And Captain?" "The Empress is not pleased." Cole could imagine. Empress Valora's reputation for protective fury regarding her daughters was legendary throughout Vidian space. Losing her children during a diplomatic mission involving the former enemy would be the kind of incident that could restart a war. The industrial district was a labyrinth of cargo storage facilities, repair bays, and processing plants that stretched for kilometers in every direction. It was also exactly the kind of place where curious children could get lost, hurt, or worse. "All right, princesses," Cole said to himself as he began a systematic search pattern. "Where would 3 kids with royal educations and no street experience decide to go exploring?" The answer, it turned out, was an abandoned cargo warehouse that looked like a fortress to adult eyes but probably seemed like an adventure playground to children who'd spent their lives in carefully controlled palace environments. Cole found them huddled together in the corner of the warehouse, behind a stack of empty shipping containers that provided shelter from the wind but no warmth. They were cold, scared, and had clearly been crying, though they were trying to be brave in the way that children did when they knew they were in serious trouble. Princess Lyra, the oldest, saw him first. Her purple skin had paled to lavender with cold, and her black wavy hair was tangled with dust, but her eyes held the kind of regal composure that suggested she'd inherited more than just her mother's throne. "Are you here to take us home?" she asked in accented standard, her voice small but dignified. "I am," Cole said, approaching slowly with his hands visible and his weapon holstered. "I'm Captain Cole Payne, Terran Marines. Your mother sent me to find you." "Mama's really worried, isn't she?" asked Princess Nyx, the middle child, whose wide eyes held the kind of guilt that came from realizing that adventure had consequences. "She's very worried," Cole confirmed, kneeling down to their level. "But mostly she just wants you safe. Are any of you hurt?" "Zara fell down and scraped her knee," Lyra said, putting a protective arm around the youngest princess, who was maybe 4 years old and looked tiny even by Vidian standards. "And we're all really hungry." Cole pulled emergency rations from his field pack, the kind designed to be palatable to multiple species. "Here. Eat these while I figure out how to get you home safely." As the children shared the rations, Cole assessed the tactical situation. Night was falling, the spaceport security was compromised by ongoing construction, and 3 Imperial children were his responsibility until he could safely deliver them to their mother. The smart move would be to call for immediate escort and evacuation. But looking at Princess Zara, who was barely older than a human toddler and was shivering despite the emergency blanket he'd wrapped around her, Cole made a decision that his tactical training would have disapproved of. "We're going to stay here tonight," he announced, settling down beside the children. It's safer than trying to navigate the industrial district in the dark with tired kids. Won't we get in trouble? Nix asked. I'll take responsibility, Cole said simply. Right now, my job is keeping you safe, and that means making sure you're warm, fed, and rested. Are you going to stay awake all night to protect us? Lyra asked with the kind of matter-of-fact curiosity that suggested she understood more about security protocols than most 8-year-old children should have to. That's the plan, Cole replied, checking his weapon and settling into a position where he could watch all the warehouse entrances. That's silly, Princess Zara said with the brutal honesty of a 4-year-old. You'll be tired tomorrow. We can take turns watching. Despite everything, Cole found himself smiling. That's very thoughtful, Princess, but I think I can manage one night. As the hours passed, Cole found his carefully maintained professional distance beginning to erode. The children asked questions about his home world, his family, his experiences as a soldier. They told him about their lessons, their favorite games, their memories of their father who had died in the war. Princess Lyra fell asleep first, curled against Cole's left side. Princess Nix followed shortly after, claiming his right side. Princess Zara, the youngest, ended up sprawled across his lap, her small hand clutching his uniform jacket like a security blanket. Sitting in an abandoned warehouse with 3 alien royal children sleeping against him, Cole realized that somewhere in the course of a single evening, he'd stopped seeing them as a diplomatic responsibility and started seeing them as children. Just children who needed someone to keep them safe. It was a dangerous realization for a soldier who'd spent 15 years learning not to get attached to anything he might have to walk away from. But as Princess Zara shifted in her sleep, murmuring something in Vidian that sounded like, safe now, Cole found himself thinking that maybe some attachments were worth the risk. The princesses slept peacefully through the night, trusting completely in the protection of a former enemy who had somehow become their guardian in the space of a few hours. And Cole Payne, career soldier and professional survivor, discovered that protecting someone who trusted you completely was simultaneously the most terrifying and most rewarding experience he'd ever had. Cole woke to the sound of approaching hover vehicles and the distinctive harmonic hum of Vidian military engines. For a moment, disoriented by sleep and the weight of 3 small bodies pressed against him, he couldn't remember where he was or why his tactical instincts were screaming warnings about being surrounded. Then Princess Zara shifted in her sleep, murmuring, "Papa," in Vidian, and everything came flooding back. The warehouse entrance exploded inward with the kind of precise violence that spoke of elite military training. Vidian Imperial guards in ceremonial armor that somehow managed to be both beautiful and terrifying filled the space, weapons trained on Cole with the kind of professional competence that made his own marine training seem like amateur hour. Behind them, moving with the fluid grace that marked Vidian royalty, came Empress Valora herself. Cole had seen pictures of the Vidian ruler during intelligence briefings, but photographs hadn't captured the sheer presence she radiated. Tall even by Vidian standards, with purple skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light and black wavy hair that moved like liquid shadow, she was simultaneously the most beautiful and most dangerous being Cole had ever encountered. She was also, quite obviously, furious. "Step away from my daughters," Empress Valora commanded, her voice carrying harmonics that made Cole's bones ache with barely contained power. "Your Majesty," Cole said carefully, not moving because sudden movements around sleeping children and angry mothers seemed like a poor survival strategy, "they're safe. I found them last night and—" "I can see what you found," the Empress interrupted, her golden eyes fixed on the sight of her 3 daughters sleeping peacefully against the chest of a human soldier. "What I want to know is why a Terran Marine is holding my children like they belong to him." The accusation hit Cole like a physical blow, partly because it was unfair and partly because it contained just enough truth to be uncomfortable. He had been holding the princesses like they were his to protect, and the realization that he'd crossed some fundamental line made his chest tight with defensive anger. Because they were cold, scared, and alone, Cole said quietly, his voice pitched not to wake the children. Because Princess Zara scraped her knee and needed comfort. Because Princess Nix was worried about getting in trouble and needed reassurance. Because Princess Lyra was trying to be brave and grown up and needed to know it was okay to be 8 years old and scared. Something shifted in the Empress's expression, anger giving way to surprise and then to something that looked like recognition. "You know their names," she observed. "We talked most of the night," Cole replied. "They told me about their lessons, their favorite foods, their father. I told them about Earth, about what it's like to have siblings, about why their mother loves them enough to send an entire army to find them." Princess Lyra stirred at the sound of familiar voices, blinking awake with the confused disorientation of a child waking in an unexpected place. When she saw her mother, her face lit up with joy that was immediately tempered by guilt. "Mama," she said, scrambling off Cole's lap but staying close to his side. "We're sorry we got lost. Captain Cole kept us safe all night." "Captain Cole?" Empress Valoris' gaze sharpened. "He gave us food and blankets and told us stories," Princess Nyx added, waking up and immediately attaching herself to Cole's arm like a barnacle. "And he promised nothing bad would happen to us." Princess Zara, the youngest, woke last and with the typical disorientation of a 4-year-old. When she saw all the armed guards, she pressed closer to Cole and wrapped her small arms around his neck. "Too loud," she complained in Vidian accented standard. "Scary people." "It's okay, Princess," Cole said gently, automatically adjusting his position to better support her weight. "Those are your mama's guards. They're here to take you home." "Don't want to go home," Zara announced with 4-year-old logic. "Want to stay with Captain Cole. He makes the nightmares go away." The silence that followed was profound. Cole could feel the weight of dozens of Vidian eyes evaluating his every movement, his every expression, looking for signs of threat or deception. But all he could focus on was the trust of 3 children who had somehow decided that a former enemy was the safest person in their world. "Princess Zara," Empress Valora said softly, approaching slowly, "Captain Cole has his own duties. He can't stay with us." "Why not?" Zara asked with the devastating directness of a child who hadn't learned that some questions didn't have good answers. "Because he's human, and we're Vidian. Because there are rules about these things." "Stupid rules," Zara declared, tightening her grip on Cole's neck. "Captain Cole is good. Better than stupid rules." Cole felt something crack in his chest at the simple faith in her voice. Looking up at Empress Valora, he saw his own conflicted emotions reflected in her expression, the recognition that her daughters had found something precious in the most unlikely place, and the knowledge that political reality rarely accommodated the wishes of children. "Your Majesty," Cole said carefully, "if I may suggest, perhaps this conversation would be better continued somewhere more private. The princesses have been through a lot, and I think they could use some time to process everything in familiar surroundings." Empress Valora studied him for a long moment, evaluating something beyond his words. "Captain Payne, are you suggesting that you accompany us to the palace?" "I'm suggesting that the princesses need continuity right now. They've had a traumatic experience, and sudden changes in caregivers could cause psychological distress." Cole was improvising, drawing on half-remembered training about dealing with civilian populations, but the words felt true. "If your Majesty would permit it, I could help with their transition back to normal routine." "Mama, please," Princess Lyra said with the kind of careful politeness that suggested she understood the political implications but was hoping childhood appeal might override them. "Captain Cole promised to tell us more stories about Earth. And he knows how to make Zara stop having bad dreams." Empress Valora looked at her daughters, really looked at them, not as political assets or symbols of her dynasty, but as children who had found comfort with someone who had shown them kindness when they needed it most. "Very well," she said finally, her decision carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Captain Payne, you will accompany us to the palace as a special advisor on human-Vidian cultural exchange." "Your Majesty," one of her guards protested, "the security implications." "Will be managed," the Empress cut him off firmly. "Captain Payne has proven his trustworthiness by protecting my daughters when he had no obligation to do so. I think we can extend him appropriate hospitality." As the imperial procession made its way back through the spaceport, Cole found himself in the surreal position of riding in a Vidian royal transport with 3 alien princesses treating him like their favorite uncle. Princess Zara had claimed his lap, Princess Nyx was showing him pictures on a holographic device that was probably worth more than his annual salary, and Princess Lyra was peppering him with questions about Terran military organization. Looking across the transport's elegantly appointed interior, Cole caught Empress Valora watching their interaction with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. It wasn't suspicion, exactly, but it wasn't complete trust either. "Captain Payne," she said quietly, "I hope you understand that what you're walking into is considerably more complex than a simple babysitting assignment." "I'm beginning to get that impression, Your Majesty," Cole replied. "But if I may say so, some things are worth a little complexity." "Such as?" Cole looked down at Princess Zara, who had fallen asleep again with her head on his shoulder, then at Princess Nyx and Princess Lyra, who were arguing quietly about whether Terran or Vidian starships were faster. "Such as making sure children feel safe," he said simply. "Everything else we can figure out as we go." Empress Valora's smile was slight but genuine. "Captain Payne, I think you may be more suited for palace life than you realize." As their transport approached the crystalline spires of the Imperial Palace, Cole reflected that his carefully planned military career had just taken a turn that no amount of tactical training could have prepared him for. But looking at the 3 children who had somehow claimed him as their protector, Cole found himself thinking that maybe some detours were exactly where you were supposed to end up. Life in the Vidian Imperial Palace was like being embedded in a living work of art that also happened to be the most complex political organism in known space. Cole had been installed in guest quarters that were more luxurious than most planetary capitals, given access to cultural advisors who spoke 17 languages, and provided with a security detail that was either there to protect him or monitor him, possibly both. But none of that mattered as much as the fact that Princess Zara refused to sleep anywhere except curled up in the chair next to his bed. "She has nightmares," Princess Lyra explained during their 3rd morning together, when Cole had woken to find the youngest princess had migrated from her chair to sprawled across his feet like a small, purple-skinned cat. "Ever since Papa died, she doesn't like being alone in the dark." "What about before I arrived?" Cole asked, carefully extricating his feet without waking Zara. "She usually ended up in Mama's room," Princess Nyx said, appearing in the doorway with the kind of breakfast tray that suggested the palace staff had quickly learned his preferences. "But now she says you're better at keeping the bad dreams away." Cole felt the familiar tightness in his chest that came with realizing he'd become important to someone in ways he hadn't intended or prepared for. "Princess Lyra, Princess Nyx," he said carefully, "you understand that I can't stay here permanently, right? I have duties, obligations." "We know," Lyra said with the kind of matter-of-fact acceptance that was heartbreaking in an 8-year-old. "Everyone leaves eventually. But you're here now, and now is what matters." The pragmatic wisdom of that statement stayed with Cole throughout the morning as he attended his first formal briefing with Empress Valora's senior staff. The meeting was ostensibly about cultural exchange programs, but Cole quickly realized it was actually an evaluation session where various palace officials tried to determine whether he was a threat, an opportunity, or simply an inconvenience to be managed. "Captain Payne," said Chancellor Vex, the Empress's chief advisor, "your presence here raises certain questions about protocol and precedent." "I imagine it does," Cole replied diplomatically. "Though I should mention that my primary concern is the well-being of the princesses. Everything else is secondary. And therein lies our difficulty," Chancellor Vex continued smoothly. "Your attachment to the royal children, while touching, creates complex political implications. There are those who question whether a former enemy soldier should have such intimate access to the imperial family. There are those who question lots of things," came a voice from the chamber entrance, and everyone in the room immediately stood as Empress Valora entered. "But I am less interested in questions than in results." She moved to her chair at the head of the conference table with fluid grace, and Cole noticed that her presence changed the entire dynamic of the room. These were powerful beings accustomed to wielding authority, but they deferred to her with the kind of automatic respect that spoke of genuine rather than ceremonial leadership. "Your Majesty," Chancellor Vex said carefully, We were discussing the complexities of Captain Payne's extended residence. Were you? Empress Valoris' golden eyes found Cole across the table. And what complexities are those, exactly? Security concerns, political ramifications, questions of precedent. Chancellor, the Empress interrupted, her voice carrying absolute authority despite its quiet tone. Last night Princess Zara slept through the night without nightmares for the first time in 6 months. Princess Nyx asked her tutors 36 questions about Terran culture and actually paid attention to the answers. Princess Lyra smiled. Genuinely smiled, not the careful diplomatic expression she's learned to use with strangers. The silence that followed was profound. If those are the kinds of complications Captain Payne's presence creates, Empress Valora continued, then I welcome more complications. Your Majesty, ventured General Korath, the military advisor, there are security protocols to consider. Captain Payne has access to sensitive areas of the palace, proximity to classified information. He has access to my daughters, the Empress cut him off. Everything else is manageable. Cole felt something warm unfurl in his chest at the implicit trust in her words, but before he could process the full implications, an alarm began sounding throughout the palace complex. The kind of alarm that made trained soldiers reach for weapons and experienced guards start calculating exit strategies. Security breach in the royal wing, came the voice over the palace communication system. Unknown intruders, armed and hostile. All personnel implement emergency protocols immediately. The reaction in the conference room was immediate and coordinated. Guards moved to protective positions, palace staff began implementing security lockdowns, and General Korath started issuing tactical commands with the kind of calm efficiency that spoke of extensive experience with crisis management. But all Cole could think about were 3 little girls who were somewhere in this palace while unknown hostiles were loose in the building. The princesses, Cole said, already moving toward the door. Captain Payne, General Korath commanded, you are a civilian guest. Remain here while security personnel. With respect, General, Cole interrupted, his military training overriding diplomatic courtesy, those children trust me to keep them safe. I'm not staying here while they're in danger. Captain, Empress Valoris' voice stopped him at the door. When he turned, he saw something in her expression that looked like recognition mixed with approval. Bring them to the secure chambers in the lower palace. You know the way. I'll find it, Your Majesty. I know you will. Cole made it to the royal children's quarters in record time, his enhanced physical conditioning allowing him to navigate the palace corridors faster than the security teams who were still implementing lockdown procedures. He found the princesses huddled in Princess Lyra's room with their tutor, an elderly Vidian woman who was trying to project calm while obviously terrified. Captain Cole. Princess Zara launched herself at him with the kind of total trust that made his heart clench. There are bad people in our house. I know, Princess, Cole said, scooping her up while assessing the tactical situation. But we're going to go somewhere safe until the guards catch the bad people. Can you be brave for me? We're always brave, Princess Nyx declared, though she stayed close to his side. Right, Lyra? Right, the oldest princess agreed, though Cole could see the fear she was trying to hide. Captain Cole, are you going to protect us like you did in the warehouse? Better than that, Cole promised. Because now I know all the best hiding places. Getting 3 children and their elderly tutor through a palace under lockdown to the secure chambers required more improvisation than Cole's tactical training had really prepared him for, but his years of experience in fluid combat situations served him well. They made it to the reinforced lower levels just as palace security announced they had contained the threat. Unknown assailants neutralized, came the all-clear announcement. Security protocols returning to normal. But Princess Zara had fallen asleep in Cole's arms during the evacuation, Princess Nyx was clinging to his free hand, and Princess Lyra was looking at him with the kind of hero worship that was both gratifying and terrifying. Captain Payne. Empress Valoris' voice came from the chamber entrance. She looked like she'd been in combat herself, armor slightly scorched, weapon at her side, but moving with the fluid confidence of someone who had emerged victorious from whatever confrontation had taken place upstairs. "Your Majesty," Cole said, noting with relief that she appeared uninjured. "Are you all right?" "I am now." Her gaze took in the scene, Cole holding her youngest daughter while the other two stayed close to his sides. The intruders were assassins targeting the royal family. Professional, well-equipped, familiar with palace security protocols. Cole felt cold certainty settle in his stomach. Inside information. Almost certainly. The Empress moved closer, her expression growing grim. "Captain, this incident raises serious questions about palace security. About who can be trusted with my daughter's safety." "Your Majesty." Questions, she continued, that have some very obvious answers. "You moved to protect my children before my own security staff had finished implementing protocols. You got them to safety through a hostile palace faster than our emergency evacuation procedures. You kept them calm and safe while professional killers were loose in our home." Cole started to respond, but Empress Valora held up a hand to stop him. "Captain Payne, I am formally offering you the position of personal security advisor to the royal children. The role comes with full access to palace resources, authority to override other security personnel in matters relating to the princess's safety, and permanent residence in the palace. Your Majesty, I'm honored, but the position also comes with my daughter's complete trust, which is something that cannot be commanded, purchased, or manufactured." The Empress's smile was warm but serious. "It has to be earned. And you, Captain, have earned it." Looking down at Princess Zara, who was sleeping peacefully in his arms despite the evening's dangers, then at Princess Nyx and Princess Lyra, who were watching him with hopeful expressions, Cole realized that somewhere in the course of a few days, he'd stopped thinking about his assignment and started thinking about his family. "Your Majesty," he said quietly, "I accept." The smile that lit Empress Valora's face was brilliant with relief and something that looked like gratitude. "Welcome to the family, Captain Payne." As they made their way back through the now secure palace corridors, Cole reflected that his military career had taken some unexpected turns, but none as dramatic as the moment he'd gone from enemy soldier to trusted family protector. But looking at the three children who had somehow claimed him as their guardian, Cole found himself thinking that some career changes were exactly what you didn't know you'd been waiting for your entire life. 6 months after Cole had first found 3 lost princesses in an abandoned warehouse, he woke to the familiar weight of Princess Zara sprawled across his chest, Princess Nyx curled against his left side, and Princess Lyra reading quietly in the chair by the window of what had become their shared morning routine. "Good morning, Captain Papa," Zara mumbled into his shirt, using the title she'd invented that made Cole's heart do complicated things every time he heard it. "Good morning, Princess," Cole replied, automatically adjusting his position to better support her weight while being careful not to disturb Nyx. "How did you end up here again? Didn't we agree you were going to try sleeping in your own room?" "Tried," Zara said with 4-year-old logic. "But your room is better. Safer dreams here." "The nightmares are completely gone now," Lyra observed from her reading chair, looking up from what appeared to be a tactical manual that was probably classified above Cole's clearance level. "Dr. Vethiz says it's because she feels secure in her attachment relationships." "Dr. Vethiz needs to use smaller words," Cole said, though he was privately impressed that an 8-year-old was casually discussing child psychology concepts. "And maybe explain why you're reading military strategy documents before breakfast." "Because you said understanding security protocols would help me protect Nyx and Zara," Lyra replied with the kind of serious determination that reminded Cole that she was growing up faster than any child should have to. "And because Mama says knowledge is the best defense against people who want to hurt you." The reminder of the ongoing security threats, 3 more assassination attempts had been thwarted in the past month, cast a shadow over what had otherwise been a peaceful morning. Cole's official position as personal security advisor had evolved into something much more complex as palace intrigue continued to swirl around the question of his presence in the imperial family. "Captain Cole," Princess Nyx said, waking with the kind of immediate alertness that suggested she'd been listening to their conversation, "are you ever going to marry Mama?" The question hit Cole like a stun blast to the chest. Princess Nyx, that's a very complicated question. Not really, Nyx said with 6-year-old directness. Do you love her? Cole felt his carefully maintained professional boundaries crumbling under the innocent clarity of the question. Yes, he said quietly. I do love her. Does she love you? Cole found himself in the unusual position of being outmaneuvered by a 6-year-old. I think so. Maybe. It's complicated. Grown-ups always say things are complicated when they're really just scared, Lyra observed with devastating accuracy. Mama smiles differently when you're around. And she asks our tutors lots of questions about Terran mating customs. She does. Lots of questions, Zara confirmed sleepily. About human wedding things and if human daddies can love Vidian babies and if mixed families work and. Girls, came a voice from the doorway that made everyone in the room freeze. I think that's enough cultural education for Captain Cole this morning. Empress Valora stood in the entrance to Cole's quarters, wearing casual robes instead of formal attire but still radiating the kind of presence that reminded everyone she ruled an empire. More importantly, she was smiling with genuine amusement rather than imperial displeasure. Your Majesty, Cole said, suddenly very aware that he was in bed with all 3 of her daughters draped across him like affectionate cats. I can explain. Can you? Because I would love to hear how you explain the fact that my daughters have apparently decided you're their father. My security staff reports to you more readily than to their official commanders, and half my court is convinced you're either the best thing that's happened to this family or an elaborate Terran intelligence operation. Cole carefully extracted himself from the tangle of princesses, who protested sleepily but allowed him to stand and face their mother with appropriate dignity. Your Majesty, if my presence is causing political problems. Captain, Empress Valora interrupted, moving into the room with the kind of casual intimacy that suggested this wasn't the first time she'd found her daughters in his quarters. The only political problem your presence is causing is that certain members of my court are having difficulty accepting that sometimes the most important alliances are built on love rather than strategic calculation. Love? Cole repeated, his voice coming out rougher than he'd intended. Love, the Empress confirmed, settling into the chair Lyra had vacated. The love my daughters feel for someone who's shown them consistent kindness and protection. The love I feel for someone who's proven that the well-being of my family matters more to him than his own political advancement. Princess Zara had migrated to curl up in her mother's lap, but she was watching the adult conversation with the kind of intense attention that suggested she understood more than anyone gave her credit for. Mama, she said seriously, can we keep Captain Papa forever? Please. Forever is a very long time, little star, Empress Valora said gently. Captain Cole has his own life, his own people, his own duties. But we're his people too now, Princess Lyra protested with 8-year-old logic. Right, Captain Cole. We're your family. Cole looked at these 3 children who had somehow wrapped themselves around his heart in the space of a few months, then at the woman who had trusted him with the most precious things in her universe. Yes, he said simply. You're my family. Then marry Mama and make it official, Princess Nyx declared with the kind of practical determination that would probably serve her well if she ever had to run an empire. That's how families work, right? The grown-ups get married and everyone lives together and nobody has to leave. Cole felt his breath catch as he looked at Empress Valora, trying to read her expression. What he saw there was hope mixed with vulnerability, the look of someone who wanted something desperately but was afraid to ask for it directly. Valora, he said quietly, dropping the formal titles because some conversations couldn't happen between a captain and an empress, is that something you would want? A real family? With me? Cole, she replied, and her voice held harmonics he'd never heard before, that's something I've wanted since the day I watched you carry my daughters to safety without asking for anything in return except the knowledge that they would be protected. Even though I'm human. Even though it would create political complications. Especially because you're human, Valora said firmly. Because marrying you would prove to both our species that love is stronger than old hatreds, that families can be built across any divide, that the future belongs to those brave enough to choose connection over conflict. Cole moved closer, kneeling beside her chair so he could look directly into her eyes while the three princesses watched with barely contained excitement. "Valora, I love you. I love your daughters. I want to spend the rest of my life making sure all of you feel safe and valued and cherished." He took her hand, marveling at how perfectly it fit with his despite all the differences between their species. "Will you marry me?" "Yes," she said, and her smile was brilliant with joy and relief. "Though I should warn you, marrying into Vidian royalty comes with certain complications." "I'm getting used to complications," Cole said, pulling her close for a kiss that felt like coming home. "Finally!" Princess Nyx shouted with 6-year-old exuberance. "Can we plan the wedding? Can we have cake? Can I wear the pretty dress with the sparkles?" As his new family dissolved into excited chatter about wedding plans and ceremonial protocols and whether Terran or Vidian marriage customs would take precedence, Cole reflected that his life had taken some unexpected turns. He'd gone from enemy soldier to trusted protector to beloved father figure to, apparently, royal consort and stepfather to 3 of the most remarkable children in the galaxy. But looking at Princess Zara, who was explaining to her mother in serious detail why Cole needed to be officially adopted into the family, Cole found himself thinking that some unexpected turns led to exactly where you were always meant to be. "Captain Papa," Zara said solemnly, climbing out of her mother's lap to wrap her small arms around his neck, "welcome to our family forever." "Thank you, Princess," Cole said, holding her close while Valora and the older girls made increasingly elaborate wedding plans around them. "I can't think of anywhere else I'd rather be." Outside the palace windows, the twin sons of Nyx Sera Prime painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, while inside a former enemy soldier discovered that sometimes the greatest victories were the ones that ended not in conquest, but in love.